did none of those bullets work? Alright, solved problem. 3, 2, 1, and... problem solved. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to StarCraft 2 Co-op, the game where I am too much of a wuss to play beyond hard mode. Casual is for the players that are completely new to the game. Normal mode is for people who are new to the game, have played a few matches, have low-level commanders. Hard is an interesting area as it does provide a great XP bonus, but it also allows the flexibility of stupid strategies like spamming while offering a greater challenge. Anywhere beyond hard, in my experience being brutal and beyond, is where you find a lot of the passionate player base. The player base where they are willing to destroy your base even if it means taking your resources for screwing them up for even a single second. In all honesty, I can play brutal on any map with almost any commander, so the difficulty is never the issue. What is the problem is all that surrounds any mode beyond hard mode are salty players and a massive amount of focus on stuff like build queue and timing and skill, which are generally something I don't have. All of these factors added on top of it for all the modes after hard mode just ruins the game for me, for someone who plays for fun and a little bit of seriousness. I mean, hell, where do you think spamming comes from? When it comes to the idea of spamming, no commander can do it better than the commander of this video, Stukov. He's kind of built that way. Stukov, if you haven't guessed it, is an infested Terran that has managed to keep his human personality while having the Zerg infection, which does make him stronger, but equally as ugly.
Indeed.
Honestly though, Stukov is at a weird place for me and in the roster itself. A commander I never have the urge to play on a random thought. I'll always look to commanders like Abathur, Zagara, Swan, or Dahaka whenever I want to play StarCraft 2 co-op. But since only one commander type per game, the queue time I find is entirely based on how popular the commander is chosen. So let's just say every time I play Stukov, I always find matches very easily. I believe that this is due to Stukov's weird yet unique playstyle. Stukov's playstyle is themed under the idea of infestation. I bet you already guessed that, but let's move on. Now, his infestation can be done efficiently in two separate ways that almost never cross or integrate with each other. These methods being overwhelming with sheer numbers or decimate with heavy firepower, never both. It's really hard to combine the two, you'll see why. At the beginning of the game, you are greeted with the infested Terran base and infested SCVs. But what's unique about them is the infested colonist compound, a structure that pumps out free units that can upgrade with the leap ability and on death can spawn broodlings. Quite useful. This building can be upgraded multiple times from 8 infested civilians every 30 seconds to 32. Also with a general reliance on creep in order to make your units not be crippled whenever they move around. The Infest Command Center not only spreads creep endlessly across the entire map passively, but also uses eggs to create infested SCVs and overlords. You will find that a lot of the units that come out of these eggs won't even realistically fit inside of them, but whatever, what do I know? One final thing about the overall mechanics of Stukov is that the green health bar is not normally going to be their health bar. Sometimes, in most Stukov's units, are going to have a limited time in their life as they come in large numbers, do large amounts of damage, but balanced out by their limited time on the battlefield before this happens. You'll find that'll happen quite a bit. Thankfully, all the top bar abilities have an increased amount of control and damage and are not always going to be limited to a temporary life. That was a joke, by the way. They very much are limited to a timed life. Starting out with the psi emitter. No cooldown, no cost. Great, right? But since Zerg matter dissolves the brain, infested troops don't move on their own and require emitter to be placed to move all units around. It can be placed anywhere on the map and act as a rallying point for troops to move to automatically as soon as they are out of the egg. This means infested marines and infested civilians will always try to move towards this direction, so make sure that you remember where you placed it because you could lose all of your troops premature before a fight. And for both a powerful defense and a powerful attack is the infest structure ability, a power able to disable enemy buildings when placed and heal allied buildings that are affected. When the structure is infested, it spawns broodlings at an overwhelming rate and can overwhelm nearby targets, absolutely destroying their numbers. They don't have a lot of health, they don't have a lot of damage, but there's a lot of them. Mainly going to be used when you need to defend a structure or your base or cause havoc among the enemy lines. But at level 2, it is capable of storing 3 charges and spawns 60 broodlings over 20 seconds. This can later be upgraded by 50% more cannon fodder, broodlings, per second. And for his ultimate abilities, yes, plural abilities, the Apocalypse is an Ultralisk on steroids that is fused with Terran technology, which gives the unit abilities like flamethrowers on every attack and a fast charging missile defense to tear apart any air units. While being controlled for only 60 seconds, it is capable of dealing tons of damage and just about taking as much as it can with its immense health and its immense armor. I recommend that when he's out to utilize his burrow ability, where any enemy affected by the ability is not only going to die easily. However, I'd recommend using him for pushing, as he is an incredible tank. Finally, to round off the ability is the Alexander. You guessed it, an infested Terran flagship capable of constantly spawning infested civilians and marines rapid fire. It also has these tentacles dealing heaps of damage. And at level 15, all units not only being drained when they're attached by the tentacles, but you have control over, meaning they will fight for you. However, when this 60-second time life is inevitably up, it keeps spawning troops even after that, having a second time life health bar while being crashed on the ground, mainly going to be spawning infested marines and civilians. However, just be sure to keep friendly units around him at all times. Again, great for pushing, better for the damage side of things, as he emits a giant aura that makes units take 20% less damage while they are inside the field. Just keep in mind that these abilities, these last two ultimate abilities, have a very long recharge time, so make sure you use the abilities wisely. Normally I would say spam them whenever you can, but that's not the wisest decision, is it? And on the topic of wasting basic troops located at the barracks, Infested of course, and the bunker, ? In the colonist building that I have mentioned before is the infested civilians. They are capable of overwhelming targets, and as you level up the building, so does the number of infested civilians increase. Later, with upgrades of Leap and Broodling Spawn on Death is amazing, especially since the unit is completely free. However, you're gonna need something for damage, and something somewhat consistent and has strength in numbers. Spawned in 10 and later at level 6 you're able to hold 20 charges of them is Infested Marines. With upgrades like Retinal Augmentation gives them more range, while Plagued Munitions gives them more damage over time. This effect stacks as well, making them excessively deadly to any target, air, infantry, heavy armor. However, they do lack detection. That is a problem. This makes not only Infested Marines spammable in large numbers, but a temporary army capable of wiping the map easily. So large numbers, very cheap at a whopping 15 minerals, and each troop makes them extremely viable in an army. Last for the infantry is the bunker. I know, it's a building, and it stores marines with upgrades like more armor and regeneration. But what truly makes this bunker special, it'll be able to constantly spawn infested marines, well, they're marines, they're just called infested troops, every 24 seconds, making them a mobile troop producer that you can place anywhere on the battlefield as long as creep is there. Now you might be wondering why I said mobile. Now, yes, you can build them wherever you want on the field as long as creep is present. That is very true. But you know when your parents told you that when you lost something, they would say to you, oh, well, what do you think it did? Just sprout legs and walk away? Well, in this case, it did sprout legs and it did move away, a lot closer to the enemy base, in fact. This case is very true for not only the bunkers, which turn into mobile units that still produce units on the move, but applies to all unit production buildings, including the infested colonist compound on the map, to move them wherever you see fit. They can just simply get up and move somewhere else. Bunkers are stronger used while they're rooted into the ground instead of walking around. The walking around is more used for just moving the bunker around and less for an offensive attack. But rooted in the ground with increased regeneration armor makes them a deadly combo with infested marines and civilians. And I'm gonna say it right here because this area of the video is where it most applies to. Why would you move these base components around, right? You know, you're gonna put them close to the enemy. Well, every single unit in Stukov's infantry have a timed life. Much like the civilians, the infested marines and the infested troopers have a very limited lifespan. This means that their distance is limited to their time life. But with the ability to move around all unit production buildings, this allows the distance to the enemy base or the target closer, which means is that they will have more time in combat and less time traveling.
You left me no choice. Say goodbye.
With infantry being so limited due to time, life, and limited range on how far they can go, this means that they are a short-term yet powerful investment that always need to be, remade. Yes, that's the word. However, mechanical units like heavy armor and air units do not have a limited life. But the price is pretty damn expensive to have for a very long-term investment, assuming you keep them alive. Stukov's heavy armor is powerful and expensive, don't get me wrong, but it does need their upgrades. From the ground comes a new unit, well, just an infested version of it, the Diamondback, a powerful unit of high damage output and a unique ability to fire while moving. So they're able to avoid damage, and due to high mobility, they are able to deal damage while leaving a trail of mucus that damages any unit that passes through it. The normal Diamondbacks are limited to ground units only, but that is taken care of due to Zerg DNA with the fungal snare. I know, sounds sanitary, right? Knocking air units out of the sky so that they can take damage from units that would normally only be able to hit ground units, making them spammable and be able to fire a weapon that, even though does armor piercing, looks a lot like poop. But since you're mainly going to be using Stukov's infantry due to the high number of upgrades that they get throughout level 1 to level 50, Stukov plays a very aggressive style, but he does have some tools for defense beyond the bunkers. Infested siege tanks, ideally from behind bunkers with a whopping 18 range, the longest in the game, which instead of firing tungsten fires an infected volatile which explodes after the initial impact, dealing 2 times the damage on the explosion of the volatile and the impact of the volatile fired from the cannon. All of this damage and range, however, is balanced out by ammunition. Infested siege tanks can create ammo every 30 seconds, but needs an infested civilian or a bunker-produced marine, otherwise known as infested troops, to charge its main gun. It's always best to keep siege tanks always near the bunkers, as soon as a marine is ready, the siege tank will absorb the marine and use them as ammunition. But if you need a ton of ammunition for a very, very large enemy or a very large threat, it's best if you move the psi emitter to around the area where the siege tanks will be able to pick up their ammunition. However, they can be used in an offensive manner. They can deep tunnel around the map wherever they choose, as long as creep is present and you have vision. However, moving them away that far will get rid of their ammo supply. Yes, it's every 30 seconds, but you can't rely on that very often, especially when it comes to dealing with hybrids. Don't get me wrong, the tentacle on the top does really good damage at a consistent rate. But if to loop that in with the artillery and comparing the damage outputs is just embarrassing. The range alone is already better. Not too common do you find, honestly, these air units because their uses are just so limited. But Stukov's air units do not compare to his infantry and his armored units whatsoever. Honestly, I could count the number of times I've seen other players, including myself, use Stukov's air units on one hand. Point is, not a lot of people use them, and you'll see why. Infested Liberators have lost their worth for even existing. Because guess what? That ground cannon they have? Yeah, that shit's gone. And it's not a lie, it's a fact. They're amazing, but they also suck at the exact same time. See, Liberators have now become an anti-air weapons that absolutely dominates the sky. However, the upgrade of Cloud Dispersal is an absolute must. It turns the Liberator into small little organisms that reduce the damage they take by 85% while they're attacking an enemy. At the end of the day, their air can be covered by infested marines in bunkers, but what do I know? I just have about, you know what? I'm not going to disclose how much time I have on this game. Liberators, at the end of the day, the infested kind, are an amazing anti-air, but considering the fact that they can be covered by most of the units I've already mentioned, they're not really that worth making, and don't even get me started on the price. Infested Banshees are good, I guess. They have a unique twist to them, however the cloak is very, very temporary. Being infested means that they are able to have 100 more health, making them a little bit more durable in combat with the ability of burrow. Don't ask. But while burrowed, they have increased regeneration of health and energy by 20 points per second while underground. So this means when the Banshee gets low, rather it be on energy for the cloak or regenerating health for the damage they take, they'll instantly go underground and they'll come back up feeling just like they came off the production line, or the egg. And finally, to conclude this section of the video, is the final flying unit and the last unit in Stukov's arsenal, which is the Brood Queen. They're not worth making at all. They are in a support unit. They have a damage dealing ability, but not only does it require you to micromanage them on top of your entire army and your base, but it doesn't even do a lot of damage as well. Their only redeemable feature is they have this thing called an Ocular Symbiote, which grants the unit of choosing detection for 3 minutes, while Fungal Growth, its damage ability, is able to take care of low health enemy attack waves like Zerglings and Marines. Other than that, they are not worth making at all. If you want detection, which is something that Stukov's army really struggles with, you're better off making an Overseer. Not one of these ones. Don't waste your materials. To end off the video, normally we do Stukov's mastery points, to which is mainly to be used to enhance or supporting his army or infested marines and civilians, so on. Now power set 1 is a choice and dependent on how you play. I personally like the volatile spawn chance, which at a maximum of 15% chance to spawn a detonating infested civilian, the ones that come out of siege tanks. I choose to prioritize mass infantry. The other of which is maximum defense, which reduces the cooldown of infestation by 45 seconds at max. So you can rather go for maximum attack, maximum defense. You can mix them in between, but where's the fun in that? Power set 2 is the same situation as power set 1. You can reduce the cooldown of either 90 seconds at max from rather a super tanky unit like the Apocalypse or higher attacking like the Alexander. Personally, I like going Apocalypse because he's able to not only deal a lot of damage, but also take a lot as well, while the Alexander does more damage and is able to summon more units into fights, but cannot take as much hits. Power set 3 is a decision that should be obvious, but I'll go into it anyways. Mech attack speed is great and all, unless you only use siege tanks and diamondbacks to a maximum of 30%. But even then, that's only 2 units. Infested infantry is a better choice overall, not only for the amount of units it affects, but increasing the maximum duration of civilians, troopers, and marines by 30 seconds, which not only gives them more range to move, but the ability to kill more units. I just feel that this one you'll get a lot more value at than the mech attack speed. Now moving on to the mastery, we have the Frightful Flesh Welder. It's quite a mouthful. Now what this prestige rank does is that factory and starports no longer have tech requirements. This means that you can build them right off the beginning of the match, which definitely does make things a lot faster. Mechanical units also have a 30% reduction in price, and that the automated mitosis, the ability for siege tanks to automatically generate ammo, is now 200% faster. The only real downside to this is that the infested colonist compound is not available in the game, which does take away all of that early game advantage for more expensive advantage. So take your pick. Next up, we have the Plague Warden. Now the Plague Warden, what it does is that Banshees are able to load 16 infested infantry and launch them at ground targets. Pretty amazing. So they can act as a transport to get rid of that timed life that they burn while moving towards their target, even if the barracks and infested colonist compound move closer to their target. This of course has a disadvantage, as infested civilians have a 30% reduced time life. This means that you won't get as much value out of them, and you will have to completely rely on moving the building closer. Overall, not a bad change. And the final one is Lord of the Horde. I'm loving the name already. Infested bunkers spawn infested troops 200% faster. This means that they can truly become a mobile infantry spawner. The only problem is that infested bunkers no longer have cargo capacity. So what this basically means is that those 6 infested marines that are inside of the thing do not exist anymore. They're still able to fire, but you're not able to take them out whenever you need them. So you're able to spawn them faster, but there are also none of them in there to deploy. So again, I would say if you want to use them if you want to focus a lot on using siege tanks, but less on actual offensive matters. And that is it. In a nutshell, that is how you play Stukov, at least from a decent casual player, one person who doesn't want to play the higher difficulties because it's too much of a wuss and he couldn't be bothered. But anyways, I really hope you all enjoyed the video. If you honestly all made it to the end of the video, it really means the world to me. As I said before, there are tons of other content creators that are making other types of content, and even content creators that are making the same content as me, guarantee better the gameplay, better the editing, better the commentary. But the fact that you're all here and you're supporting me, it truly means the world to me. And the fact that I can get some of you informed on this game, and maybe I can get a few smiles out of you guys, that really means everything to me. I honestly cannot bring it into words. But anyways, I really hope you all enjoyed the video. I hope you all found it informative. If you are loving this channel, if you are loving this series on StarCraft 2 Co-op, hell, if you're loving me, be sure to scroll down below and hit that subscribe button to keep up to date with all of the content coming your way. With all this being said, this is ToxicSpill. I hope you all have a fantastic day. And remember, do stuff you love. Signing off.